All good, man.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. We are live. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Andy Murphy, and I am with Integrity Data Insights, and I help other companies with their reporting and analytics. And have a special guest with me today, Kyle Carter. He's the founder of Zenylitics, and they do some super cool stuff. And I love talking to Kyle, and we both overlap a little bit of what we do, but I think you'll really enjoy the area that Kyle's in is a super cool area that not a lot. I think a lot of people that even in the analytics space have done a lot of the stuff Kyle has. So thank you, Kyle, so much for joining.
Good to be here. Good to be here. I'm laughing because we are almost late starting this thing because we were chatting so hard and got a little off track. So.
It's a good sign. Yeah, it's like sometimes those are the best, when you're not thinking about it too much. So
right on.
Hopefully that'll we'll just continue that. So I guess tell us, before we get into Zenylitics and what that is, maybe let's just talk a little bit about the space of, customer service and customer interactions. Everybody has a story, right, with that. I mean, about, hey, I called in and this and that, or this disaster or that, and whether it be a consumer product or whatever. One thing I've been, struggling with right now is I have like sleep apnea, and I've been trying to get a new CPAP, and I have to keep constantly calling this company. So I've had a lot of interactions with them. That's probably my most recent, but I guess, everyone has a story, and on the business side too, companies view this as a cost center, and, oh crap, I gotta, this is just another line item. Just tell me, how is that kind of still your approach with a lot of the companies you deal with? And tell me a little bit about the space, just in general.
Yeah, if you think about contact center, it has been generally over the years looked at as a cost center. And in a perfect world, as a business, we sell a customer a product or a service, they're happy, and we never hear from them. No chats, no emails, no phone calls, nothing.
Right.
But that's not the real world. That's not how things happen. Our customers need support across their whole life cycle. At Zenylitics, we're focused on conversation intelligence. We focus on mid-market organizations, generally contact centers, 500 or less agents. And really what we're trying to do is extract insight out of those conversations because customers need that support across their whole life cycle, and that support's hard work. Businesses have generally just looked at it as a cost center, and we truly don't believe in that. We think that every conversation is an opportunity. Your example of reaching out to a CPAP company, that's frustrating, right? It should be frictionless. And there's so many opportunities within those interactions, whether you're sending an email, whether you're reaching out by phone, to provide a better experience. So that's what we work with our customers to do, is to look at the interactions that they're having now, use AI to extract insights from them, and then help our customers execute on those insights.
Yeah, that's really cool. So it's like, is it a fairly new, I mean, has it been around a long time, or is a lot of people, because I mean, really, I don't know, as far as, I'm concerned in the data space, like obviously, it's always been easy to kind of do data on like, numeric metrics and things like that. But things like calls, like you thought, up until not too long ago, you thought, hey, how do you analyze that,
Yeah, so I mean, we partner with a company called CallMiner. They've been around for 20 years in this space, so it's not new by any means.
Yeah.
But I think the application of it being more widely accepted is absolutely new.
Right.
You're taking vast amounts of dark data or unstructured data that in the past sat, phone call recordings and chat transcripts sat on a server somewhere, and nobody did anything with them. You might have had someone go through and listen to a call here or there, or reactively if you got a complaint or a bad Google review. But for the most part, those just sat, and that was a gold mine of data that wasn't being looked at. We'll take that, unstructured data, turn it into something that's discoverable. between a transcript, acoustic metrics, things of that nature. And then we can start to extract insights at scale from it. It's no longer just a human going in and listening to a phone call and saying, what can I learn from this? We can do that over millions of interactions and do that very efficiently.
Right. What is that? Just what's the acoustic? Shoot, I already forgot the name of it. Acoustic data. What is that? Tell me a little bit about that. That's kind of interesting.
So you think about if we're having a conversation right now, we can turn this into a transcript. We are turning it into a transcript,
Right.
I'm sure, right? But some of the acoustic metrics are things like silence. How many breaks do we have? How, who's doing the speaking? Is Kyle doing the speaking or is Andy doing the speaking? And that can be impactful in, if you think about a sales environment. I want my prospect talking. I want to get them talking about their pain point, how I can solve their problem. I need to figure that out by getting them talking about their problem. But in a servicing environment, that balance may be different. So when we talk about acoustic metrics, we infuse that along with the transcript, so we can not only just use the raw text, but also have those acoustic metrics to provide another layer of insight.
Okay, I was thinking and that probably my past life came back, but when I worked for LexisNexis, a big company for years, and we were trying to assemble all this data, and one part we were trying to assemble was the customer service data. This was a long time ago, and there was something that the rep, the person as customer service rep, could indicate the temperature, I guess, meaning like if it got heated or if the person was upset or something, and we would mine that. That part of it. We weren't doing the analytics to tell it. We were just relying on what the customer service rep said. But it was super interesting to see when they flagged it, what people would say. So that's what that kind of a little bit came to mind too when you said that about kind of more than just the text of the conversation, right? There's an inflection in somebody's voice, or
It's also nice to be able to take the manual intervention, what you're talking about there, taking that out, right? So we're not expecting someone who's taking 100 phone calls a day having to do that. So we can do it just based off of the conversations themselves. And that's how we really take that massive amount of data, again, unstructured, and turn it into something that we can extract insights from.
Okay. Yeah, super interesting. And tell me about, I know we've talked before about, unsolicited feedback versus solicited feedback. Tell us maybe a little bit more what you mean by that, and kind of how you guys use that information.
Yeah, I probably overuse the term unsolicited feedback, but I think it's best to probably define what solicited feedback is. And solicited feedback is things like interviews and focus groups, but most often it's surveys, right? Everybody's gotten that survey to say, how do you feel about the experience you just had with us or a particular product? You get a myriad of those requests, even probably over the course of a day. I have very strong feelings about them because they're rife with problems, right? There's valuable data there, absolutely. You've got low response rates, you've got highly polarized responses. I think about all of the surveys that I've actually responded to over the course of my adult life.
Right.
I haven't responded to a lot of them, but the ones that I I've either been really upset with an organization or highly satisfied, and I want to gas somebody up for doing a good job for me, right? Or an experience that I had. So that's the solicited side. When we say unsolicited feedback, every single time one of our customers interacts with their customer, they give you unsolicited feedback. They're telling you how they feel about your product, your service. You're not specifically asking for it, saying, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel about me? But they're telling you where their pain is. They're telling you where their frustrations are coming from. They're telling you what they're excited about. And that's what we think about when we talk about unsolicited feedback. Every chat, every email, every phone call is a way to extract that. And it's been overlooked because it's unstructured. The reason we send surveys is because we can put it into a template. It's structured. So it's more difficult to get that unsolicited feedback. That's why surveys exist. And, we use a tool like CallMiner, our conversation intelligence partner, to make dealing with that unstructured data much more manageable and customizable. it allows us to really get in and take that huge universe of interactions and start to gain insight from it.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I know I'm just thinking in my head while you were talking, I was like, that company I've been talking to about trying to get my CPAP, I've probably had 10 interactions with them over the last week. And like some of them, I've been more happy than others, but it's like, if I'm just picturing what they could gain out of that, number one, the guys called us 5 times. I had to proactively bug them about status of things that really they should have been proactive pinging me instead of me having to constantly say, hey, what's the holdup, what's going on? Like those are the kind of insights I would think you guys could glean off call like mine.
So they're clearly not paying attention to your customer journey, right? It sounds like to me you need a refresh on a product, right? That
Yeah.
doesn't seem like too complex of an interaction, right? It should be pretty straightforward. Those are the types of things that we'll get into with customers as they come on board with us, is looking at things like first call resolution, looking at the underpinnings, what is causing people to have to call multiple times. If you're trying to buy something from this organization,
Right.
and you can't do it in one call, there is something incredibly broken with what they're doing, right? They need to be looking at this, and it more than likely it's not an isolated incident. If it's happening to you, I'd wager that this is happening across their business, and that's lost revenue, which is what keeps me up at night, right? Every touch point we have with a customer is an opportunity not only to grow revenue, but just to retain them. Consumer choice has never been higher than it is right now. We're able to change providers so quickly. Switching costs are so much lower now. I think every interaction is of paramount importance, and we need to look at them in that way.
Yeah, excellent. And I'm, one last thing about my interaction is, I'm a loyalist at heart. Like I'm trying to give this company the business because I've done business with them before and I was satisfied. But like this other company is seriously there, because I think the doctor like sent it to a couple different places. This other company is like, seriously, they call me 5-6 times a day. I haven't answered them because I'm, trying to get it to, but it's like, man, maybe I should pick up the phone and talk to these, because they, clearly want the business, whereas this other place, that I'm dealing with is kind of
you're a better man than I, because I am a mercenary with my money. If I have a bad experience, I'm gone. And maybe that's a byproduct of working in the space that I work in. But I'm very much a mercenary in that respect. I'll give you an example. The idea of choice. I'm a fisherman. You see that I've got fishing poles over the side of me here. I'm a fly fisherman. I started as a kid. I fell out of touch with it until the last 10 years or so. And there's tons of incredible products out there, right? And it's not cheap. It's not cheap. So I do a lot of research when I go to buy things.
Yeah.
Like early in my reintroduction to the sport, I had an incredible experience with Orvis. And I was overwhelmed. I didn't know what I wanted. And the person that I interacted with asked me a bunch of questions. Where are you located? What are you trying to fish for? He did all sorts of research. And this was via chat. This person was so incredibly engaged.
Yeah.
I spent a few $100 that day. I do not want to admit, because I'm sure my wife is going to see this, like how much I've spent since then, because the experience was so good. And it's continued at that level. They have a measure of care about those experiences. And you can tell businesses that do that, and that really focus on, crafting an experience that's going to excite their customers and lower friction. So yeah, I buy from them all the time. And there's other products out there that are probably as good, maybe a little bit less expensive, but I buy from them all the time because they're top of mind because of that experience. So yeah, I would be shifting gears if I were you.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
No, you're absolutely right. I think my wife would agree. Well, let's get into a little bit of the mechanics of it. So, I think we kind of have a high level. We definitely understand, I understand a high level what you do as far as, you're working with these companies. They have, a lot of, some of them may have a lot of people call interactions.
Mhm.
And maybe just walk through a little bit of the process. How do you engage with one of your, clients, or, pretend I'm a company that has a call center. Maybe just walk through what that setup looks like. Maybe just get into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah, so let's start kind of thinking about how we go from the old school idea of cost center to a revenue generation opportunity. We'll talk about that at a high level, and then I can give you
Sure,
more of the
yeah,
nuts and bolts on how
that's
we
great. Yeah, yeah.
engage with our customers. The idea of contact center being a cost center is not new. It's because managing experience takes effort, and effort equals money. Um, that's always been crazy to me. We've talked about it a couple times throughout this conversation. Every touch point's an opportunity to build engagement. So when we start a new engagement with a customer, we really look at every conversation being an opportunity. And when
Okay.
you think about it from a revenue perspective, there's a lot that we can do with tools like CallMiner and the other conversation intelligence platforms out there. But when you think about it from a business perspective, really at the end of the day, it's revenue. How can I drive more revenue with my contact center? So we think about that. We put those opportunities into three buckets. The first one really is customer experience, and how can I drive retention and brand loyalty? Thinking about my Orvis example, and it really comes down to saying, out of that unstructured conversation data, what are my customers saying about me? What causes them pain? What do they like about what we do? And we take those insights from their conversations. And once we understand them, we talk about how do we fix those friction points? How do we lean into our strengths? What do we do really well? Can we do that more frequently? What are the points in our process that cause customers pain? That's the first layer.
Okay.
Um, from a revenue perspective, we also look at cross sell and upsell. How do I get this customer who's already in the fold with me? How do I get them to look at additional products or services that might fit their needs? I'll use the Orvis example again. I go to them for fishing gear, and I will say this, full disclosure, they have clothing too. Their clothing does not fit my vibe. I would never look at them for clothing, but I will
Okay.
say, because of the experience, I've got some of their stuff in my closet. So they were able to, by creating a great experience for me, they're able to bring me into other business lines that I would never have considered before. That would not have
Wow.
been part of my experience. I've got to
Right.
buy a new dog bed for my golden retriever. Their dog beds are expensive. I'm considering it because of the experience that I had with them. So thinking about how do I take this person who's already engaged with me and get them to buy more or to do more with my organization, thinking about cross sell and upsell. And the last
Right.
one is revenue retention. These are the conversations we have with new customers, right? Is how do I identify signals of customers who are at risk, right?
Yep.
We've done a lot of work with customers around churn. People are telling you when they're upset, and once that temperature gauge gets to a certain level, they're gone. Your
Yeah.
CPAP example is a perfect example, right? You're at that inflection point. Like
Exactly.
I'm at the max. I'm at the max that I'm willing to.
Right.
I'm
One more
willing to
thing. It's done. If that, yeah.
Exactly. So
Right.
on that last one, I'll give you an example. We have a customer in the telecom space, B2B telecom. One of the things we did for them for churn usage is we took a look at their customer interactions, and we segmented out their customers that left. And we looked at their customer journey, all of the conversations that they had
Oh,
leading up to
wow.
that churn event. And we identified that there's certain things that customers do. They talk about, when's my contract up? They talk about repair issues. At telecom, that's part of the business, but they
Right.
talk about repair issues that haven't been resolved. And as those things build up, they're more likely to churn. So what we did for this organization was we built them essentially that temperature gauge, right?
Yeah.
And once it hits that threshold, once that temperature gets to a certain point with one of their customers, we've created an automation where an account manager gets notified and they can reach out proactively and say,
Right.
hey, what's going on? What can we help you with? And try and mitigate that risk. And if you think about, B2B telecom, that's not a small engagement. It's not that they're losing, you
Right.
know, Kyle or Andy's, T-Mobile or Verizon
Yeah,
plan.
right.
We're talking about this is a large ticket purchase.
Yeah.
So the amount of effort that goes into retaining those customers, it's worthwhile.
Yeah.
So when we start a new engagement, thinking about revenue and how we can drive revenue, those are some of the questions we ask, and how we really look to get our customers thinking about using conversation intelligence to drive revenue.
Right. It's kind of like a mind shift, right? I mean, you kind of have to get them to shift, like back to our full circle we were talking about at the beginning, from I think it's the title of our conversation here, getting them to think from cost to revenue generating. Yeah, that has to be satisfying. I can imagine just finding those things have got to be, I just light up when I hear that kind of stuff, because I do a lot of data work also, and some of it's mundane, and you don't always get to, there's not always those moments as much. So that's really great.
So that's a good pivot into how we stay focused on that. One of the things we do at the start of every engagement is we set up a charter. Data, right? And there's so many rabbit holes you could go down. We set these goals many times focused on revenue generation or revenue retention with customers at the beginning of an engagement with us.
Okay.
And if we're looking at data that doesn't serve that purpose, we stop looking at it. It's no longer valuable to us, right? There's a lot of cool things I could tell you about what's going on in your contact center, but if it doesn't help you make more money or keep more money in the
Right.
business, it's not worth it for us. So that's part of our methodology, is having that charter that allows us to say, these are the guardrails for our program. Because a lot of our customers come in and they've never had this level of visibility to their interaction data. It's like what you heard as you walked past somebody on the phone, or maybe you listened to a call here and there. You've never had the ability to get your arms around so much of your interaction data. So it's really important for us to keep clear guardrails on that program, and that's important for us because it's very easy to get shiny object syndrome when you've got that much data in front of you.
Right.
So yeah, I feel your pain. That's definitely one of the ways that we try and keep a nice methodology that gives us those guardrails to do what we set out to do.
Right. Well, that's really smart. Like focusing on the end and kind of being goal minded. That's critical. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about sentiment analysis. I know I've worked a little bit with sentiment analysis, and you guys have. I've done. It's just, I think it's fascinating to me. I don't know, just something about it that you can feed it a sentence, and that there's a bunch of different flavors of it, but the ones that I've used, you feed it a sentence, and this black box kind of comes back with various things about if it was positive, negative, neutral.
Mm-hmm.
So do you guys leverage a lot of sentiment analysis as well in what you guys do?
We do. And thinking about sentiment, whether it's positive or negative, at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're using a machine to identify clusters of positive or negative language, right? And
okay.
When we think about that with our customers, I literally just had a conversation with a fairly new customer about this yesterday. We assume that most interactions are going to be neutral, right? It falls somewhere in the middle. What we use sentiment analysis for is really to identify those outliers. What are the things that are causing a lot of pain? And on the other hand, what are the things that are causing a lot of happiness and a great experience? So we'll use those clusters as a first step in our discovery process, right? Because our customers will come in and they think they know generally, and most of the time they're pretty close. They think they know what's going on in their contact center, but by using this extensive data that we now have, we'll use sentiment to identify those more affected segments. And I'll give you an example around negative sentiment. We just spoke with a customer yesterday about their population of negative sentiment interactions. And what we found was there was one topic that was driving the majority, let's say, of their negative sentiment. And we presented this to their CEO, and his response was, okay, now we need to learn what's under the hood. I can understand why that is, but let's start to use this intel to get under the hood and say, okay, what is it about this issue that's causing problems? And we use it as a step in discovery to learn where problems might lie. Your customers, like I said early in the call, your customers are telling you what they're happy, what they're upset about. When we can aggregate that at scale, we can really start to find where we might have process issues. We might have, issues with a product that you're not hearing because it's spread out across tens of thousands of interactions. It really helps us kind of sight in on where the opportunities are. So that's generally how we use sentiment. We'll use it as a tracking metric as well to say, hey, if we make changes in X area, do we see sentiment shift, et cetera? So it's a great discovery tool. And then, it's a metric for performance or to track results as we make changes within customers' businesses.
Okay. Yeah, I've always been interested in it. I don't know. I think it's just fascinating. And then, obviously there's sometimes where it gets it wrong, but for the most part, I've been pretty impressed with the AI and the models to get it right. So yeah, maybe let's get into a little bit. I know we kind of dipped on it, but if you're working with a customer, is it kind of like a one-time engagement? Like, do you kind of just say, hey, I have a call center. I'm sure it's all over the map, but do you have times where it's like you do one-time analysis for a person and you're done, or is it more of an ongoing, thing?
It's an ongoing. The vast majority, I'd say 98% of our engagements are ongoing. So we partner with a platform called CallMiner. They've been our software partner since day one. Fantastic platform. Customers come to us. We provide them with the platform, but that's only one leg to the stool. So we also provide the people and process to come along with it. As you know, data is not going to give you insights itself. People have to get in and interact with it and, ask it questions and test it. So we bring the people and process along with that. So our customers generally have contact centers or have high volume customer interactions, and they'll come to us on an ongoing basis. They'll come to us and we'll set that charter up. Those are our marching orders for the beginning of a program, and we'll build out their program. We'll teach the machine what's important to them. We'll use it for discovery purposes. We have a team of analysts. Many of our customers don't have business analysts baked into their businesses. Like every piece of SaaS out there, if you don't put the right people around it, you're not going to get value out of it. We bring the platform. We also bring the people. The people have the expertise and the process. So our engagements generally are ongoing. That charter I mentioned before, that's a living document. That's not something like on day one is going to look one way. 9 months into an engagement, 2 years into an engagement, it's going to look very different. As we learn, we iterate, and so on. So it's an ongoing relationship. The way I really frame it to our customers is we're their team down the hall. They don't want to go out and buy a platform and hire me to run it and hire a bunch of analysts to do the work. They bring Zen in to do all of that and to do that in a bespoke way that fits their business. And that's really where we come in. We leverage our expertise to do that.
Awesome. And are people, one question I had too, while I was thinking about I'm guessing you're dealing a lot with company executives and stuff like that. Are they pretty receptive to what to what you came up with? Are they sometimes like, oh, they don't believe what what the data is telling them? Or do you get any pushback, or is it kind of, do they pretty much receptive to what you guys tell them? Because it can probably be a pretty sensitive thing, right? I mean, some of the feedback you guys are probably mining isn't all positive, right? It can probably paint a pretty bleak picture at times. And
I'm a fan of constructive friction. So I think that's one of the things that we try and stress from the beginning is because also we're outside your organization. If there is something wrong, I'm going to tell you that. That's the conversation we had with our customer yesterday, saying, hey, there's this one topic that is driving a lot of friction with your customers, driving a lot of negative sentiment. We do. I mean, it's part of the process. You do get people who are wary of the data. And it's a matter of building trust. And that's one of the things we talk about with our analysts all the time is, how do you ensure that you build that level of trust with customers to make sure that they believe in the data? And there's ways that we can go in and show them how we arrived at results and testing and have gone through the testing process and so on. That's part of the methodology. And that allows us to build that trust. You're always going to have skeptics. You're always going to have detractors. But that's something that if you're aware of and you have confidence in your process, and I think transparency is important there too. I don't think that anyone in our organization thinks we know everything about our customers' data. We're very comfortable saying we don't know, and we're going to dive in and look deeper to find something out. And I think that the way that we manage those relationships and our methodology really helps us build that trust, because that is incredibly important to us.
Right. Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's they're not necessarily paying you to just say what they already know or what they want to hear. So that's encouraging to know. Some of our last questions here, I guess one of them is like, we talked about, one of your big use cases is preventing people from leaving.
Yeah.
But on the flip side is opportunities, right? You think, wow, this is revenue generating opportunities. And obviously, preventing somebody from leaving is definitely preserving revenue. But maybe talk a little bit about the other side of it, about how some examples of how you've identified opportunities based on these interactions that you were able to bring to the clients.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you a technology sales use case. So we've got a customer that sells a suite of technology products. They came to us trying to optimize their sales process, right? And we did some early discovery, and our analysis showed a strong correlation between asking discovery questions. Why is a person looking for a particular product? Let me understand your pain points.
Right.
Had a strong correlation to sales outcomes. And if anybody in the sales space is watching this, they're saying, duh, like no kidding. But what we learned beyond that was not just the fact that discovery questions that behavior needed to happen in a call. It was about when it needed to happen. What we learned was the earlier that happened in a conversation, when I asked that question and got the prospect talking about what their pain was, it drove more engagement. Higher level of engagement was correlating to sales. So it's not even just the behaviors, it's looking at when it happens. And where we come in, especially with sales organizations, is helping them craft how they interact with their prospects, right? There's no perfect way to sell something. If there was, I could teach a voice agent to do it. But there's ways that we can be more successful by looking at what behaviors correlate, when certain things need to happen, and so on. So that's the type of bespoke analytics we'll do for customers to say, hey, your business, you might be selling the same products as a competitor, but you interact with your customers differently. Let's see what works. Let's see what doesn't, and really adjust how we interact with our customers based off of what we find in the data. Is it going to work every single time? No. But if it moves the needle up a few points, if you start, if your close rate goes from 30% to 32%, there's a very clear impact on revenue there. And those are the moves we're trying to make. Those are the levers we're really trying to pull.
It's almost exactly like back to your example with the fishing, right? I mean, that's kind of, from what I'm hearing, they asked the right questions, right? They made you they did all that, they made you feel like, wow, these people care about me. They really want me to understand, and that sounds like that's kind of what you're thinking that other people can do as well.
Yeah, it's really just having an understanding of what levers you can pull, what behaviors work, what don't, and continuing to look at it. And you asked about how we structure engagements. That's why our engagements are ongoing. These things change, behaviors change over time, products change over time. So this is iterative, right? Like I said, it's not the same on day one as it is at year two. We need to continuously be looking at this. There's no just flip the switch, easy button type of approach here. It's this constant iterative process where we need to continuously look at these things and make sure that it's working, and have that layer of oversight and governance to make sure that any changes we make are having the desired results, et cetera. So it's a really big part of it.
Right. Oh, great. Yeah, just in closing, I guess, tell me, I mean, I think we've kind of hit a lot of it, but just maybe tell the audience what kind of clients, or what, if they have a business or they're trying to think of, possibly working with, what kind of businesses do you work with? What kind of leaders do you work with? Those kind of things. Who's a good fit for what you guys do?
I think the best way to classify it is anyone who interacts with customers at scale. It doesn't matter if you have 5 people on the phone or chatting with your customers, or 5,000. If you're interacting with customers at scale, using a solution like we provide is incredibly important. Otherwise, you're just looking through a keyhole into a room. You're not getting the full picture, right? We have customers that have 5 or 10 people on the phone, and that doesn't seem on its face like a great opportunity to leverage AI and to use these level of advanced analytics. But because of their use case, using the technology sales example from before, they're selling a product that is high value. So 1 or 2 more sales, or 1 or 2 more points in their close rate goes a really long way. So
Right.
classifying it that way, I think is the cleanest way to do it. If you interact with customers at scale, you should be looking at conversation intelligence tools and providers like Zen.
Well, with that, Kyle, thank you so much. This was a great conversation. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you if they want to learn more about you or the company?
So absolutely check us out on LinkedIn. We have our LinkedIn page, Zenylitics.com. Once this is up on LinkedIn, I'll drop more contact information in the chat as well. Check our website. But yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. Thanks for having me on. This was always fun. Looking forward to chatting more.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next time. Thanks again, Kyle, for joining us, and check them out. And we'll see you all in the future. Take care.
Thanks, Andy.
Oops.